When you hear the phrase soft as steel, what do you think of? While the word steel might conjure up images such as massive high-rise buildings, where does the soft part come in? And what exactly does this mean in our work and in our lives? Welcome to the Soft as Steel podcast with your host, Dennis Doran, featuring engaging conversations with a wide range of industry leaders around soft skills, how we practice love, inclusion, social justice, and compassionate leadership that's everlasting in the workplace. And now, here's Dennis Doran.
My guest today represents the kind of person who exemplifies the phrases I quote so often. Do what you love in the service of people who love what you do. Cathy Dolan-Schweitzer is the president of Health Well Done, based in New York City. Her professional journey spans over 25 years. Cathy's focus is on building effective people-centered teams, workplaces, and projects, as well as developing leaders who care about the well-being of people. She's the author of the book Health Well Done, in which her Health Well Done methodology, which includes the healthy patient, healthy team, healthy approach, as the way to put the patient first, is explored. She has served as a senior project manager on numerous healthcare industry programs, most recently at Columbia University's Irving Medical Center. She's an experienced trainer and performance development coach working in the AEC industry to adopt a people-centered leadership strategy to thrive in today's people-centered economy. In her own words, "My mission is to develop leaders in the AEC industry who care about both people and planet and who exemplify this in everything they build." Cathy, welcome to the Soft as Steel podcast.
Thank you so much, Dennis. That was very nicely put.
Well,
and
thanks.
I just want to let you know that I have been very excited to be on this podcast, as well as honored that you reached out to me. So,
well,
thank you.
I'm pleased to have you, and I'm honored as well. So I guess we're just being nice to each other for the beginning part of this. You know, it could go sharply downhill as soon as I open my mouth and ask the first question, but we'll see. We'll see. No, but on a serious note, thank you.
I have every confidence that you will do a great job here, Dennis.
Well,
and
I'll give. If I don't, then they'll edit all of my stuff out, and so it just works out very well. They become very short interviews, and it's like you talking to yourself, but hopefully in a really good way. I was very deliberate in one and thoughtful in one regard, and there was a reason why I opened my introduction of you in the way I did. I believe, based on what I've learned about you, what I've read, the things I've seen that you've done that have been visible through LinkedIn and other sources, that the phrasing about doing what you love makes sense to you, that you operationalize that in how you've approached all of your work in the various roles that you've played. Is that a fair way to start about who you are?
I would say that's a very fair way. I think, I spend a lot of time on my material and my content. And it's just because I love being a project manager and I love facilitating teams to get something accomplished. And I have seen over the years what goes right with teams and what goes wrong with teams. So I think I would say that the love of people, caring for people and taking care of your teams, and the actual, result of all of that. We see that because I'm in the construction industry, we see that in the built environment. And I don't know if people really understand, the job that we all serve in the construction industry and how important it really is and how it impacts, everyone's health, as well as, it sets up success for so many people, and at the same point too, it can go the other way too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and when you first came into the construction industry as in a role as a project manager, you came in with virtually no direct hands-on experience in the building process, in construction itself. What you understood well was people.
Yes.
Talk about that, your arrival in the industry, which again also at the time had a very, 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 very small number of women in our industry. This inevitably, in every conversation I have with both men and women on my podcast, but particularly women, I think it's vitally important to, again, let women present to the largest audience in the construction industry, which are white males. God love them, all of them. But have them focus on something other than you know how to wield a hammer, you know how to do a drawing, you know how to do this or that, which is technical in nature. You know how to even ask questions that end up resulting in some design feature built into a patient room or things of that nature. But you've never really done anything in construction. How can you manage this project?
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm a teacher at heart. I started out as a special education teacher. I think by that type of education, the skill sets are tremendously transferable. And I always kind of joke around and say, I had them as kids, now I have them as adults. Mm-hmm. So that's the first. The second is that I had a mentor who believed in me, right? And that's a wonderful thing. And what he said to me from the get-go was like, look, you are an excellent manager. I can see that. He said, I have a building in New York City on 57th and 6th. He said, it's it's an apartment building with some commercial retail clients. I want you to come down and manage the construction on the apartment renovations. And I kind of laughed and said, I don't really know anything about construction. And he said, I'm not worried about that. I can teach you everything you need to know. And I have to say that he was amazing. He was the kind of guy who taught me how to split a nickel, how to negotiate. He taught me what was important in, managing and facilitating teams to get things accomplished. And based on all of the experience of what we went through in that building, I learned a lot about construction, and he was just a phone call away. I could always ask him questions, and that's how, you want to talk about boots on the ground as far as grassroots. That's where I really learned a lot about construction. And even today, I may not know everything, but the one thing I do know is that I have a team. And I think a lot of people really respect and appreciate the fact that I ask them the questions. I think I know how to ask very good questions, but I ask them the questions and I look at them as my specialist on the team. I don't try to overshoot them and, tell them I hate to say this, but when I worked as a project manager for a consulting firm, we had a lot of project managers who were architects in the past, who were engineers in the past. And a lot of times that stuff got them in trouble because they tried to design the project and not let the architect, who was the architect of record, actually do their work. So there was a lot of conflicts that went on because of that. And as you said, I was, probably the shortest line whenever we went anywhere was the women's room. Mm-hmm. I had mainly men around the table who were jockeying, arguing, whatever it may be, to get their points across. So I was able to kind of bring more of a calm to it. And at the same time, too, have people feel that they have some sort of importance and specialty because I relied on their information. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not that naive. I always did my homework in the background, but at the same point, too, I always made them feel special by letting them speak about their specialty.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And again, just the way you described that, you highlighted several what I call soft skills or qualities that you possess that made it possible for you to connect with and then develop relationships with the individuals that you relied on to complete the work in each and every apartment or each and every space. To deal with gathering the facts to justify a change order, to deal with a problem that need to be solved, and that's one of the highlight areas that in many of the conversations I've had, we reach a conclusion that women are just much better at this, and this, and everything you described are things that are that again And it is a gender. It's a gender issue, and I can't. There's no sense in talking about it any other way. It's just the expectation that the traditional view has, my generation in particular, and even the one that's right behind me. The view they have is if you didn't learn it in the tools or in the trade, boots on the ground, through an apprenticeship, through some other direct means of learning the skill or trade, that you can't stand in the same space with me and talk about this issue or that issue. So that was something that you had to overcome. And say again what your thought process has been as you've matured over these good number of years in terms of how you approach meeting and beginning to work with a new team. Talk a bit about what that is like for you and how you go about getting them all set and understanding their roles, understanding what your expectations are, and developing, if you will, the first connection among the ingredients that are going to produce the project for the customer.
The first thing I always do, and, recently we've had a few changes in our project team just recently. And the first thing I do is I sit down with that person and I really ask them questions about who they are, what's their family life like, etc. I really connect with them. I find a topic that we can talk about, whether it's cooking or skiing or whatever it may be. And I have to say that I'm genuinely interested in them, because one of the key things for me is always trying to understand how am I going to inspire and motivate people to actually do their job. Now, I can't, strong arm them. I think I kind of laughed for so many years because I feel like people were project management abused, as I would call it. Because as a project manager, you come in and they're just like, literally, I've heard statements like, oh, I know what you kind of people are like. Mm-hmm. And, when I hear that, I kind of laugh to myself and I look at them and I go, oh, so you've been project management abused, huh? And they look at me and they laugh and I go, okay, I understand, where you're coming from on there. But I think the key thing for me, and it takes time. So there's two kinds of people, right? There's the people that are really receptive to that connection and will easily speak to me. And then there are the people who are standoffish and are not necessarily have a belief that I'm good enough to be in their realm. Let's put it that way. Mm-hmm. And I understand that from the very beginning. And it doesn't bother me because I always look at them and silently say, it's okay. You just have to get to know me. Mm-hmm. And I understand that. And I think those are the ways that, I approach when I first start a project meeting. The other thing I always do is, for me, honesty is key. And I think one of the things that you brought up was a lot of the contractors, let's say, for example, believe you don't belong in their sphere because you haven't been a carpenter, an architect, an engineer, whatever it may be. But by the simplicity as well as the detail of the questions I ask. So you'd be amazed how interesting it is that things are not really brought to the surface, because there's a lot of gibberish talk about technical, things that are going on. Mm-hmm. So for example, you might, and this is a very simple one, we got to have the plans by, 11:25. They have to be, we need them. Okay, fine. 11:25 comes and it's like, okay, well, how do we want the plans? Who gets the plans? Mm-hmm. How does it get this? No one ever asks those questions. It's just, they talk a lot about a lot of other things that they don't dig in. So for example, another thing I might discuss is we are working right now on a timber job where we're installing CLT. So it's half steel and half CLT. And so then the question is, what are the logistics? Who has to do what? Because I think that's the other thing. Who's responsible for lifting the CLT pads, or the panels and installing them? Mm-hmm. Who's going to be handling making sure that they're waterproofed on the edges? Who's going to be making sure that things are, totally covered when they leave the site. I mean, these are the types of questions that are very simple. And if you don't ask the questions, no one really understands what they're doing. And I think, we have this ability to see beyond the technical of a particular job.
Yeah. I love your methodology that where you're talking about putting the patient first. That's fairly fundamental. But how has that contributed to your success in managing projects and programs with the healthcare clients?
So let's talk a little bit about the history of what went on, right? So I think back in 2003, I started working at Stanford Hospital, and we bought into this philosophy called the plane tree philosophy of how to treat a patient. And the interesting thing about that was they felt that the best way to treat the patient, as best you possibly could and put the patient first was to take care of the caregivers. Okay. And so what that meant is that if you take care of your caregivers and your employees, they will then take good care of the patient. And that was the philosophy all the way through. You basically built the culture and the built environment around all of that. Mm-hmm. And that was in 2003. So then let's take a look at 2010. 2010, you had the Hospital Care Act that came into play. And I'm sure I didn't say that correctly, but what happened was then it was required that the patient was going to now be able to, like in some respects, give feedback or write a score on how well the hospital took care of you. And if, for example, you were discharged from the hospital within 30 days and you came back with the same diagnosis within 30 days, then the hospital was basically almost on the hook to pay for it. Mm-hmm. So that changed everything. Now, all of a sudden, you started to see the way that hospitals did business was very different, as well as to the fact that they started to push all of the patient services out into the communities. Okay, so your question is, what does that mean to me as far as patient first? So I talked to you a little about the story of the Plane Tree franchise and the philosophy. And then in 2010, the ACA Act came and got put in place and people started to change. But we at Stanford Hospital were way, way ahead of the curve because we were actually doing that back in 2003, right? So then what happened was when I became a patient in the actual environments that I was actually facilitating teams to design and build, I had a whole nother level of understanding of like, what does it really mean to be a patient? Mm-hmm. And I actually was shocked at the amount of decisions that I made myself that really impacted the patient as well as, the staff. Mm-hmm. And one story is the reclining chair. So, my surgery, they had cut my core from top to bottom. It wasn't like a cesarean across. It was from top to bottom. And they actually got me up and put me in the reclining chair. And the nurse looked at me and said, I want you to hold on to my elbow because when I flip the lever here, you're going to go back very fast. And I said, okay. And so she flipped the lever. I almost had a heart attack because it was like a jerking, mm-hmm. And it really like, whoa. And as I lay there, I thought, I was the one who said yes, buy these reclining chairs. Mm-hmm. And so I said, so after that experience, and there were several other examples, I said to myself, you know what? I have to come out and think about approaching projects from a different perspective. And so that's when I wrote my book and, came up with the 3 principles of when you approach a project, you really have to think about the people. You also have to think about the people on your team. you have to talk about, the next principle was healthy team. And that is, how do you share wisdom and experience with your team? And then the last principle was healthy project. And then how do you take that project from start to finish with the idea of keeping everyone healthy? That means healthy the people that are on your team healthy, as well as the end result or the end user who's going to be using this particular space. So patient first, it doesn't necessarily mean patient first. What it means is everyone needs to have the same attention and care, because we're all connected and we're all working together.
Yeah. It's let's call it the general version of that is patients are customers, patients are clients. Your superintendents, your foreman, your architect, your engineer, those are all the team that builds a project. And I think there's a pretty significant amount of conversation around the idea if you want to make sure that your customers are well taken care of, that they're satisfied with whatever service or product you're delivering, you have to take care of the people that provide those services or deliver those products, and they're the ones that work for you on your team. Does that sum it up pretty well in let's call it a non-healthcare version?
Yes, yeah. Absolutely. And, one of the things is I always say that my roots are in healthcare, but I have now, after the pandemic, moved into, more of a general construction population. And the reason why is because these principles really do apply to what is happening right now. I always see myself now as the bridge, and the bridge from the young professional, I would say, to, I don't want to say the dinosaurs, to the people who have been in this industry for a long time. And you can see the growing pains, right, that's going on right now. The younger generation, there's a generational shift on the way that they want to do business. And that's our future. And that is, we have to get them into the pipeline in order for them to actually, work through and be able to service our customers.
Right.
And then, the people that have been in this industry for so long have so much knowledge and what have you, but they also have to realize that they have to learn from the younger generation, as well as the younger generation has to learn from the older generation, or the people that have been there and who are very, very experienced.
Yeah, I agree. So from the perspective that you bring based on your body of work, how would you describe the more significant challenges and opportunities that the construction industry is facing now? How would you describe them?
Well, look, I think the construction industry is slow to change. It always has been. Okay. I think I have definitely seen some good shifts. And, if I look at my team right now, I have a span of all different ages. But as I see the younger generation coming in, I do believe that they are much more open to feedback. I think they are much more open to talking things through and having conversation and understanding things from a couple of different directions. And I like to see that. That's a very good thing, as opposed to some of the it doesn't necessarily mean that they have to be as experienced, but there are people in the industry who I do things exactly the way I do them, and I don't want to hear it, and I'm not going to bend. I think I do talk a lot about emotions that are going on. And I'll give you an example where I had a situation where a designer made a mistake, and it meant that the contractor had to do some additional work, which they had never done with this type of material. And they were angry. They were angry that the designer made the mistake and that the responsibility was going to be left upon them, and they could possibly screw it up. And so, I literally had to throw that on the table and say, look, you're pissed off and you're angry at this situation. Is that true? Yes. okay, so if that is true, what are we going to do to get past it? So I think those kinds of conversations are going on more in our industry, and that's a very good thing. Now, what do I think the challenges are? I still think that we have another 5 to 8 years of adjusting to this new way of working with where soft skills are absolutely necessary, and people are starting to realize it. I mean, look, the other day I was on the job site and I had one of the steel workers. We were walking around him because we were watching them install the CLT panels. And he said to me, "Hey, we're much nicer now. 10 years ago, we would have never let you do this." And I laughed to myself because I said, yeah, you're right. But, I think it's becoming, you can see it filtering into the industry. The other thing I think that I love and I am seeing is, first of all, I gave a presentation to an engineering firm, and the amount of smart, beautiful engineers, women engineers, I was shocked. I never realized there were so many of them. So I think what's happening is you're starting to see more and more women coming into engineering as well as architecture. The other thing I thought that I've seen is more women want to be superintendents, and they love it, which I thought was very interesting. And again, I have to say, even as long as I've been in this business, I have found that a lot of the workers and the men on the job sites, as well as in the offices, for example, they are very respectful. I've never really ran into a bad situation except for with the concrete workers, and that was it.
Except for the concrete workers, huh?
Yeah. But so I think, look, honestly, I have a big and enthusiastic view of where we're headed. I think having our team right now that we have is very diverse. We have all different cultures as well as men and women, and it works. It really does work. And I think people have the respect to listen to each other. But, honestly, when we started this, the owners set the pace for having an open, honest relationship, and with the intention that we were building a school for the future leaders of our world. And that, everyone really fell in line with that. And that gave me a wonderful opportunity to be able to, facilitate the team. And that, for example, is something that is very special.
Have you had any chance to be involved with any of the outreach programs that try to tell the story of construction to high school students, or any other kinds of programs that are out in the community? You've been able to get involved in any of those?
Yes. So at Professional Women in Construction, we actually created a video where we interviewed an architect, an engineer, and a construction manager, all women, who, and the whole video, and we distributed it to high schools all around, the New York and New Jersey area. And it was just why we got into the industry and our love of it. So that was, something I've done. I do mentor. I have 3 students that I mentor. One is, 2 are seniors. One's already in college.
Good.
I'm constantly trying to talk up the construction industry if they seem to have an interest in that.
Good. Well, there's another place you can do that. So, feel free to do that as we continue our conversation. So let's as we come to the kind of towards the end of this conversation, I want to go back for a minute and talk about you paint probably one of the more positive and optimistic outlooks on the future of where the industry is now, where it's going, particularly as it relates to diversity, based on a variety of things, gender, race, etc. Are you as enthusiastic as I'm gathering about how we're doing? Just finding a way to get along as people in our industry without all the other biases and judgments and labeling and all that kind of stuff. Are you feeling positive, and if so, why?
Yeah. So you know what? Look, it's very funny, right? I mean, I have a very good sense of humor, and I think I have a bit of Teflon. And I think that's important, right? In this industry, you have to have a good sense of humor and you have to have Teflon because you do have a cast of characters. As a matter of fact, one of the things I always say when I introduce myself and I'm on a call with subcontractors, let's say, I always introduce myself as the ringleader of the circus of many acts, right? And then they kind of laugh at that. So I think, first of all, the people that work in this industry, I think a lot of people love what they do. I think they love the fact that they go to work every day and they use their hands or they solve problems or they have to use creative thinking or whatever it may be. I find people who are in this industry pretty much love what they do. So that's a good thing. I think we have work to do. There's no doubt about it. I think you have to have the right individuals in there that are the peacemakers that can actually be very grounded in the way that they help people to sort through conflict, because there is a lot of conflict in our business all the time. Yeah. It's a constant, I spend I feel like you need to be a social worker or a psychiatrist to actually work in the industry, and a lot of times in my position, because my position is more of I'm looking to keep people aligned and motivated, and everyone has to basically agree that this is the way we're going to go. And if they don't agree with it, at least they have to have some sort of inkling that they agree to disagree and we're moving forward. Because half the time, if I don't have that, it just gets short-circuited. Yeah. But I am enthusiastic. I do believe that there are a lot of people that are still coming into this industry that love what they do. I have a friend of mine who runs a course for the union. It's a carpentry course. He said that 25% that are registered in that course are women. Oh. And the reason why, he said, is when you think about it, and it becomes a very interesting thing as to when you're looking to hire people to be carpenters, electricians, or mechanical techs, etc. Is women who are single moms who basically have to raise a family on their own. They love construction because of the fact that they work 7 to 3. So they have time to drop the kids off at school. They get to pick them up after school, as well as to the fact that they can support themselves. They can make a very good living. Yeah.
Well said. Good wrap up. It's good to hear the words out of your mouth. I've heard those phrases and thoughts in other conversations. So I'm glad there's people who are thoughtful leaders in our industry are on the same page, or at least certainly in the same volume of this continuing story of the construction industry. Cathy, it's been a delight to have you. I wish we had more time to talk, but I'm told to stop talking at about 30 minutes. But it's been a great conversation. I hope you've enjoyed it as much as I have.
I have. As I am, I'm so grateful I've met you, Dennis. I have listened to all your podcasts now. I love, your hearing your guests, as well as to the fact that all your ideas that you're putting across. I can't say enough that this is what we need. This is what's going to make this industry better. And this is how we're going to get more people into this industry, by making sure that we train people on the soft skills and how to get along and how to be.
Right. And we also give them opportunity to hear from people like you that have had long, successful careers in the construction industry and started out with the thought about loving what you do, which is a phrase that I say all the time. And more recently, I heard a quote from Steve Jobs and Warren Buffett, who both said that there are 4 words which are essential for people to enjoy success. And the 4 words are: do what you love. So
Exactly.
I'll leave us with that thought. And again, my gratitude. Thank you for being on the Soft to Steel podcast.
Thanks, Dennis.
Thanks for joining us today for this episode of the Soft as Steel podcast with your host, Dennis Doran. Dennis is the author of Soft as Steel and a leading speaker and trainer for organizations across many industries and verticals. To learn more about the work Dennis is doing to activate soft skills in the workplace, contact him at DennisDuranSpeaking.com. Be sure to check out his book, Soft as Steel, on Amazon or wherever books are sold. You can subscribe to this podcast on iTunes or wherever you'd like to get your podcasts. And please remember to share this episode with your friends, colleagues, and anyone you feel would benefit from the conversation. We'll see you next time on the Soft as Steel podcast with Dennis Doran.
Produced by Audivita Studios. Connect your voice to the world.